and make my picks through there. So if you have any questions about a team throughout the way, please let me know by putting it in the chat. It's my first time doing this, so I'm pretty excited. I say let's just get going. So I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller, and then I have the bracket up here, and we're just going to start with the Fort Worth 1 Regional. So, personally, I think this regional is going to be a bloodbath. It's the one with UConn in it. UConn's the 1 seed over here, and then Vanderbilt is the 2, which I think is going to be a very exciting 1-2 matchup if we can get it. Now, obviously, we're going to start with the first game here. I think UConn, UTSA, right? UConn's pretty much a given here. Considering that they finished the season undefeated and they came in really, really strong. And a lot of the argument I've heard about UConn this season has been, well, maybe they shouldn't have gotten the number 1 overall seed because they play in the Big East and that's a conference with less competition. So they didn't earn the 1 seed. A team like UCLA or South Carolina or Texas should have gotten it because they play in harder conferences, which I understand the point here, but they're not beating these Big East teams by 15. They're beating these teams by 50 every single night. I can only remember one game this season in conference where UConn was close to anybody in their conference, and that was when they played Villanova the first time. The second time they played Villanova, they crushed them. Iowa, they played Iowa this season. They've also played Tennessee and Notre Dame for their non-conference ranked opponents. I really like UConn. They've beat all 3 of those teams. In fact, they really killed Iowa when they played them. So, obviously, I think it's a given that UConn's going to make it out of this first round, right? I'm not seeing a Harvard versus Stanford 1998 first round game here, which, fun fact, is the only time in NCAA women's basketball tournament history where a 16 seed has beaten the number 1. Moving on to this next game, 8-9s are very, very challenging. Iowa State, coming in out of the Big 12, they started off the season very strong, but towards the end, they hit a little bit of a rough patch. Obviously, they have Audie Crooks, who I think is one of the best players in college basketball. If you haven't watched Audie Crooks play, I highly suggest it because she is an absolute beast in the paint. And she catches a lot of hate online, but instead of just looking at what TikTok has to say, please go turn on an Iowa State basketball game like this one coming up first round of the tournament against Syracuse. Now, Syracuse is an interesting team to me because they're kind of mid in their conference. I mean, the ACC, I think, has been stronger in past years, but you're still going to get a very challenging schedule year to year. Because obviously you're going to have to play Duke. You're going to have to play NC State. You're going to have to play Notre Dame, the elite teams that play in the ACC conference. They do have Uche Ezoje, who is a phenomenal player. She's averaging 15 points a game this season, but I don't think they're as deep as Iowa State. Iowa State coming in with Addie Brown, Audie Crooks, and Jada Williams as their big 3. Jada Williams is a lockdown defender. Obviously, she spent her first 2 years at Arizona before transferring to Iowa State, which I think was a phenomenal move for her career. With Syracuse, they've kind of lost to every significant ACC team. And when I say that, I mean the teams that are at the top of the conference, as I mentioned before. Duke, NC State, right, Notre Dame, premier ACC, Louisville, premier ACC teams. So I'm going to have to go with Iowa State out of this first round. Now, we move on to Maryland Murray State. I don't think much needs to be said here. I think Maryland is a very solid Big Ten team and just missed out hosting this first round. So I think they are coming in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. So obviously we got to go with Maryland coming out of this. Same thing next round, North Carolina. Again, a premier ACC team. Up against West Illinois, those are a bunch of girls that can shoot the lights out of the ball. Congratulations to them for winning their conference tournament and getting a bid to this year's March Madness. However, North Carolina is a solid team, and I think the combination of Alina Arenaslo and Courtney Banger as a head coach is going to be dangerous going into this NCAA tournament. The next game is where we get a little bit interesting, right? We have Notre Dame playing Fairfield. Notre Dame, obviously, kind of a rough season. We saw how much losing all their players in the transfer portal hurt them, but, they still have Hannah Hidalgo. And I think Hannah Hidalgo, if she had left, they would be in a very different position than they are now. I think last year, right, they came in as a 3 seed last year, not as dominant as they were, still playing a decent schedule coming out of the ACC, feeling the impacts of their portal, but I think they've actually fought through this season a little bit better than I thought they would. Now, you look on their matchup, you look at who they're playing, and you see Fairfield. And many women's basketball fans don't know about Fairfield. And there's a couple things I want to say about this team. The first is they have been one of the best mid-majors in college basketball for the past 5 years. The second I want to say is 2 years ago, back in 2023, first round, they came in similar situation, except this year they're a 12 seed playing against the 5 seed, the Indiana Hoosiers, and they win. They completely upset Indiana. In fact, they actually beat them pretty handily, and that Indiana team still had Mackenzie Holmes, which was an elite Indiana basketball team. Now, they've fallen off in the recent years. Sucks for them. They'll be back. They're rebuilding. I think they have a pretty decent recruiting class coming in next year, and we'll see what damage they can do in the portal. But back to this game, Fairfield's an interesting upset that I would look at taking in this first round. Also considering, this game here, it's going to be in Ohio State, which is closer to Notre Dame, and if their fans travel pretty well, they will have the advantage there. I just don't think Fairfield is kind of a one-trick horse in the sense that, yes, they play good defense, but they're really known for their threes. This team makes a total of 11 threes a game, which is, I think, top 3 in the NCAA this season. Very impressive. But what happens if the shots aren't going in, and who are they going to have to stop Hannah Hidalgo? I think Notre Dame gets it out of this first round, even though they're not as good this season, right? And then moving on, Howard winning the MEAC, the men winning the MEAC. It's a great year for Howard basketball. The only problem is they run into a very good Ohio State team first round with Jelani Cambridge averaging 22 points a game. I just don't think they have a shot this year. I just don't think so. And as much as I would love an upset, this is not one of them. So I have Ohio State moving on. Moving on to Illinois-Colorado. Illinois-Colorado should be a good game. The 10-7s and the 9-8s tend to be the best games, and that makes sense because they are the closest to each other in seeding. Illinois coming out of the Big Ten, I think they had a pretty successful season. They did make some noise in the conference tournament, making it further than some people thought. But I think Illinois has been one of the most underrated teams in college basketball all season. I think they should have been a bubble rank team. I think they should have been ranked this season, but, I'm not the committee, so I don't get to make these decisions. The thing is, Illinois has Barry Wallace and Sarah Parchment. I think Sarah Parchment and Barry Wallace are two of the most underrated players in college basketball. Illinois fights hard. They are a very solid team. They love to run and get up and down. I think Barry Wallace is a 3-level scorer, kind of can score the ball at will when she wants. Obviously getting knocked out by Iowa in that Big Ten tournament, but I don't think this stops me from picking Illinois in this first round, and I'll tell you why. Colorado coming out of the Big 12, they finished kind of middle of their conference, upper middle. I want to say they finished 6th in conference, and this team is good. they're pretty well-rounded. They have 3 girls that average about the same amount of game, right? Desiree Wooten, Ziana Walker, and Jade Masagayo. Obviously, all 3 of them kind of average the same here, but I just don't think they have the amount of oomph that Colorado, that they need to beat a team like Illinois that I think could have been ranked a little bit higher. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not the committee. And then High Point, again, congratulations on winning your tournament. But yes, I do have Vanderbilt winning pretty easily in this round. So that finishes up the first regional, right? We're here, Fort Worth, Region 1. Please, if you have any questions, put it in the chat. I'm not the biggest Twitch streamer. This is my first time doing this, so I'm kind of looking at the chat on my phone while I'm doing this on my laptop, so please let me know if you have any questions or you want me to cover a certain team. But yeah, let's move on to Regional 4. Now, yes, I know I probably should go to Regional 2, but we're here. It's Regional 4. Again, South Carolina coming in as a 1 seed, coming out of the SEC, arguably the best conference in college basketball. I know, I'm a huge Big Ten fan, but I don't think anything can amount to the level as the SEC. Right? The SEC getting 10 out of 16 teams in the tournament just shows how deep of a conference they are, and then I don't see them losing. So they'll face the winner of the play-in game on Wednesday between Southern and Samford. Moving on, Clemson, USC. I think this is a very even matchup because obviously we know, if you've watched women's basketball, you know that USC has had kind of a down year this year because of losing Juju Watkins, right? Arguably one of the best players in college basketball. Juju Watkins was the heart and soul of her team. Unfortunately, went down with that torn ACL in the past NCAA tournament. But they do have Jazzy Davidson this year, right? Possible. One of the best freshmen in the league. I know she didn't get freshman of the year, but she has a very bright future ahead of her. Clemson, again, kind of another mid-ACC team. I mean, they've won some games here and there, but they're not the most special team ever. I think I got USC coming out on top on this first round. But again, 8-9 games are always pretty challenging to pick. Michigan State, Colorado State, right? Michigan State, obviously, I think it's going to have a pretty easy time this game. Colorado State, again, they won the Mountain West. San Diego State was actually the 1 seed, but they kind of laid an egg first round against Air Force, surprisingly, so it sucks to see them miss out on the tournament, but Colorado State, they're pretty good. They're just not Michigan State, right? There's a huge difference in college basketball between Power 5 and mid-major conferences, and that's true on the men's side too. But there's only a handful of really solid mid-major teams that I would consider picking as upsets year after year, and like I mentioned before, Fairfield's one of them, and then the other one's coming up pretty soon. Moving on, Oklahoma, Idaho. I don't think there's any question here going with Oklahoma. Reagan Beers, Aaliyah Chavez, Peyton Verhulst. This team is good. They're experienced. They have some veteran leadership. I don't think the first round's going to be a problem for them at all. All right, again, here's one of my other favorite mid-majors. I know. Washington and South Dakota State. Shoot. South Dakota State, Summit League champs. Washington coming out of a successful season of the Big Ten. I want to say this is their first 20-win season since Kelsey Plum was there back in 2018. And so South Dakota State has Brooklyn Meyer. If you remember my Bracketology first round stream from last year, you remember I talked a lot about Paige and Brooklyn Meyer. They don't have Paige Meyer this year, but Brooklyn Meyer is there, given as much buckets as she can. She didn't win Summit League Player of the Year this year because that went to North Dakota State's star player. And I have a lot of thoughts about North Dakota State. I think they should have also been in the tournament. This is a very challenging game for me because I love to pick South Dakota State, but do I think they were as good as they were last year? No. And I hate to be so chalky picking this first round, but I look here and I think I have to go with Avery Howell, Sellers. Obviously, Ellie Ladine has been on point recently. As much as I hate to pick against the Jackrabbits because I love watching them play, and I think Brooklyn Meyer is one of the best players in college basketball, and I don't want it to be her last game. Washington, I think, has to be the way to go. And then, again, UC San Diego winning their tournament. Good for them. Big West champs. Heidi Vanderveer, Tara Vanderveer's sister, legendary coach at Stanford's sister, is actually head coach of the Tritons. But again, TCU, Olivia Miles, De Silva. Does much more need to be said? Marta Suarez, by the way. I mean, if you guys aren't familiar with Big 12 basketball, please tune in and watch Marta Suarez because she's been on a tear recently. And then UVA ASU for that last playing game. They got Georgia, the 7 seed. They'll be playing out in Iowa City. Now, here's my thing here. I don't think UVA or ASU has the potential to beat Georgia. Georgia, coming out of the SEC, I said it before, I'll say it again, one of the best conferences in college basketball. Now, yes, Lauren, UVA, obviously an ACC team, ASU, they're the Big 12, another solid conference, but we have to go with Georgia here. And then I think, sorry FDU, but Iowa's Iowa. So, let's move on to regional. Number 2, this is Sacramento 1. This is going to be on the top right side of your bracket. UCLA Cal Baptist. I mean, again, WAC champions, go Cal Baptist, but UCLA is going to roll them. Another 8-9 game here, OSU versus Princeton. I think this is another extremely challenging game to pick here. I don't think Princeton is as good as they were last year, and I know, give me heat for it, but I just think they have the capability to lay an egg here. Because I think Oklahoma State is better than some of their premier Ivy League opponents like Harvard or Columbia. I could see them being kind of at the same level. I just don't know what to expect out of Princeton. And then Oklahoma State can really shoot the lights out of the ball. But the thing with Oklahoma State is, and with most shooting teams, not all, but most shooting teams, is they're inconsistent when it comes to threes, and they kind of live and die by it. So, oh my gosh. Guys, I don't know if I have some kind of setting off on my chat. I don't know what's going on here, but people are telling me that they can't comment. So, hold on. I'm trying to see if I can fix these settings. Or maybe you need to have an account to comment. So if you don't have an account on Twitch, maybe you can't. I'm not entirely sure. Again, this is my first time streaming on here, and I really wanted to use Instagram or TikTok, but I don't have enough followers. Or on YouTube. So if you know anyone, can we get the low show to 500 subs by next March Madness? So I can stream on a platform that more people use. So yes, you should make an account. I appreciate everyone that is watching this stream. I really appreciate it. I really, really appreciate it. So, anyway, let's continue on. Oklahoma State, Princeton. Again, I think Oklahoma State... I don't want to be so chalky. Maybe I'll pick Princeton to go out of this first round, but frankly, you can flip a coin. So I'm going to roll with the Tigers here. I will buy you followers. I appreciate that. Let's get the YouTube to 500 subs. Share with your friends and fam. Again, shoot, while we're self-promoting, if you know anyone that might want to tune in to the Low Show Bracketology stream, spread the link around. I put it on my Instagram story, but because of the new laws in California, my account is now private, so people can't just follow my account, and random people can't see my stories, which is like, I understand the reasoning behind that, but whatever. Alright, moving on. I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here. Let's get this first round out of the way. Ole Miss Gonzaga. I don't think that's a question. Ole Miss has been on a tear. They have Cody McMahon this season. Gonzaga, yes, they won the West Coast Conference. The West Coast Conference is kind of weak. Gonzaga has been pretty good in the past. Just, I think it's not super challenging to get out of the West Coast Conference. Minnesota Green Bay. Green Bay is, again, one of my other favorite mid-majors this season. My one problem is they're playing Minnesota, which I think is Minnesota is just, frankly, a better version of Green Bay. Right? They have two very solid bigs. Sylvia Hart, I think, is phenomenal. Their point guard, Mara Braun, very solid. So, I don't think it's a secret we have to roll. And there's not going to be very many upsets in the first round. Or realistically, even at all in the women's tournament, it's hard. It's really hard because there's such a large drop-off between, even between the top seeds and the lower seeds, but even between, the ones and then everyone else. Yes, I know UConn won it as a 2 seed last year, but it's not very common, and I think UConn is always a special situation. Here's something that I want to talk about this next game here. Baylor, or the play-in between Nebraska and Richmond. Nebraska-Richmond, I think, is going to be a better game than this Baylor versus whoever wins. Because I think Nebraska and Richmond are very similar skill teams. And when I say there's a handful of mid-major teams that I actually like and actually can make some noise in the tournament, Richmond is one of them. I think they have Maddie Dugan, who's, again, one of the most underrated players in college basketball. Because she plays at Richmond, and that's in the A10 conference, and many people don't watch mid-major basketball, but the A10 is one of the better mid-major conferences, so if you do want to watch a mid-major game, I would start with the A10. Then Nebraska, Britt Prince, Jessica Petrie. I think Britt Prince, one of the better players in the Big Ten. Now, let's think of it this way. If Richmond beats Nebraska, I don't think Richmond's going to beat Baylor because Baylor's just more athletic than them and just stronger overall as a program with a lot more experience in the tournament. If Nebraska beats Richmond, I think the game between them and Baylor will be closer. If you're looking for an upset to take, I wouldn't recommend it being this game. I might go with South Dakota State over Washington before Nebraska or Richmond over Baylor. But realistically, I would not touch Richmond over Baylor. Maybe Nebraska over Baylor, but again, I think that could just be Big Ten bias. From me, I think Baylor gets out of this first round. Duke versus College of Charleston. Again, Duke is better. Duke is better. I don't think I need to say more. ACC champs started the season off a little bit rocky, but they turned it over. They turned it around. Texas Tech and Nova. We know the 10-7 games are always pretty close. And this here is the highest seed that Villanova has gotten since, I think, 2023, when Maddie Siegrist was at Villanova. She's now plays for the Dallas Wings, but Maddie Siegrist was an absolute bucket in college, and she really carried Villanova for a while. And then obviously they had Lucy Olson the year after that. I just don't think they have enough, they don't have a signature star like they did in those 2 years. Now, Villanova, yes, they were close with UConn once. As I said before, that was the one team that UConn was actually close with. And, I just don't think Villanova has it this year. They've played a good mid-major schedule. When I took a look before the stream, just to kind of review, to look up some upsets that could possibly happen, because I know it's not going to be all chalk in the first round. Even though I think I'm picking all of the higher seeds right now, I have to go back and check. But, sorry, I just dropped my pen. Yeah, I just don't think they have the star power. They have played Princeton, Fairfield, and they did actually play West Virginia this year. But Texas Tech, they're ranked this season, right? I think they finished the season ranked 25. Pretty solid in the Big 12. This team doesn't have much tournament experience from what I remember. I can't ever remember them in any tournament doing anything significant. But, this team is solid, right? Obviously, to be ranked, you have to be very good. That's a given. And they have pretty balanced scoring, too. From what I remember watching them earlier this season, for a couple games, I think it's a given. Texas Tech. And then do I even need to say much about LSU over Jacksonville? LSU is LSU. Possible Final Four team. And then let's head on to the last regional here. This is Fort Worth 2. And you might hear me say, oh, Fort Worth. And then take a look at Texas in this first round and be like, why is Texas going to play in Fort Worth? I don't know, but they got pretty lucky, from what I have to say. So, Texas, boom. First round. I don't think we have to worry about Missouri State or Stephen F. Austin. Oregon, Virginia Tech. Again, I think another very even matchup. Kind of similar play styles, similar teams. I will say I have watched Oregon play more this season than I have Virginia Tech. And I think that could just be a matter of me living on the West Coast and Oregon games being on late at night when I'm home, done with homework, and have time to watch basketball. Virginia Tech, now, this team is very different than they have been in the past years, and I think that's pretty obvious with Kenny Brooks going to Kentucky to go coach over there, and then really their core from a couple years ago of Georgia Amore, Liz Kitley, and Kayla King have all graduated from that Final Four team. So Virginia Tech is super new, and they've actually come back pretty strong. Matilda Eck is still there. I think Callie Wenzel is also still there. Oregon, obviously they have Katie Fiso. They're big. Etude, I think, is very solid. So this is another kind of flip a coin. So in these kind of games, I want to look and see, where are they playing? But they're playing in Texas because, remember, the top 4 seeds get to host. Top 4 seeds per, region get to host in the first round, if that makes sense. So, if you can picture it, the 1 seed, and then the 2 seed, and then the 3 seed, and the 4 seed will all host. And then Texas is kind of in the middle here, right? So, realistically, I've watched Oregon play more. I think this team, as I mentioned before, Virginia Tech does not have much tournament experience. Their coach is fairly new. They've had a couple people that were there over the Final Four run back in 2023, but again, they're all seniors or 5th years. So I'm going to go with Oregon. Again, picking chalky, but I think 8-9 teams, there really is no chalk because they're so similar. And then moving on to this next game, JMU actually beat a lot of people pretty handily in the Sun Belt Conference this year. The one thing I have to say, though, they're going up against a SEC powerhouse school in Kentucky. And, look at that. I just talked about Virginia Tech. Here we are with Kentucky. Kenny Brooks is a phenomenal basketball coach. So he's going to lead his team. Obviously, okay, also, hold on. I need to finish my thought. Clara Strack is a phenomenal basketball player. And honestly is one of the most underrated in the SEC. Will I say? Yes. So Kentucky, obviously pretty easily. And then Miami, Ohio making the tournament. But again, they play West Virginia. West Virginia is arguably one of the best defensive teams in the NCAA. So got to go with them. And then moving on, Rhode Island's been a solid mid-major this season. My one thing is they're going up against Alabama, who's an SEC school. And then when you look at teams like this on the mid-major conference that don't have a super strong out-of-conference schedule, you're like, well, they're not battle-tested. Like, yeah, Alabama's not at the top of the SEC, but they're still an SEC school and they still made the tournament. So I think with that being said, you have to go with Alabama in this first round here. Again, Louisville and Vermont. Louisville losing that ACC championship. Probably should have won that game considering that they were up 4 with like 53 seconds left. And then Duke came back because of just a defensive lapse and then some offensive rebounds, which was pretty nice for Duke. But again, Vermont, go Catamounts, winning their conference tournament, but it's not going to be close. This brings me to another 10-7 game here. NC State versus Tennessee. Right, when you look at this, you're like, this is again another close game. NC State maybe has underperformed a little tiny bit this season. Maybe some people thought they would do better than they have. They have Camille Pierre this year, transfer from Vanderbilt. And then again, Zoe Brooks is a senior. She's a very solid guard. You have Wes Moore. NC State has tons of tournament experience. Now, this year they might not have Sanaya Rivers or Isaiah James because they both graduated and are now in the WNBA. But they're still a very solid ACC team. And then you look over at Tennessee. And if you follow women's basketball on social media at all, you're going to understand what I mean when I say Tennessee is a very messy team. Obviously, Kim Caldwell, their head coach, maybe made some comments to the media that a lot of people thought should have been kept in the locker room. She was outwardly saying, oh yeah, like our team doesn't try, we just don't care, all that kind of stuff. Straight out of the media. And I think right now that locker room's kind of a mess because there's such a conflict between the players and the coach. And I think it's showing in their most recent games, right? When you take a look at Tennessee, they've lost their past 7 games. Their past 7 games. And I know their past 7 games have been SEC opponents, which are always going to be good teams day in and day out. But as a premier basketball team and a program with the legacy that Tennessee has, this season has honestly been a failure. And maybe failure is the wrong word, right? They have some transfers coming in. They have some freshmen. Janiah Barker they got from UCLA, and then the Paldo twins coming in as freshmen, Mia and Maya. Again, I'm not being chalky, but I think Tennessee is athletic, and I think these teams are super evenly matched. But it's just hard to say what version of Tennessee we're going to get in this first round. Do I think they have the better lineup? Yes, I think actually, skill-wise, this team is better than NC State, but I just don't really know what's going on, and I don't know if they can just fix whatever they need to fix in a couple days before this tournament. So I have to go with NC State here. And then, again, Patriot League champs, Holy Cross, taking on Michigan. Michigan looks very good this season. I don't have any doubts that they're going to make it past the first round. In fact, I don't know if I picked any upsets in this first round. Now, recapping, in case you tuned in a little bit late, for upsets I said that were possible to pick. Let's go back to this round of 64. I like South Dakota State maybe possibly over Washington. Because if you're playing in one of these pools, especially on ESPN, like a little tournament challenge, it's all about picking up the points, right? So you can play it safe and pick Washington, or you can try to pick up a game on everyone else, because South Dakota State is fairly niche as a school and a program to know. I did go with Princeton over OSU, but again, like I said, 8-9 games. Depending on who wins this game, I could see an argument for picking Nebraska, but as of now and as of making this bracket, we don't know who's going to win the game. And that obviously alters my decision here. So let's head on to the round of 32. To everyone watching, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. People have told me that you need an account to be able to chat on the stream. So if you want to do that to ask some questions, or if you have my number or something and want to text me, if you have any questions or anything, please do so. The whole point of me doing a stream is because I want to interact with some of the people watching, and with this whole Twitch, I don't have an account thing, it's really messing me up with that. So again, please send me any questions if you have them. If I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down. We are here in the round of 32 for Low Show Bracketology 2026. So let's keep moving. Back up to Fort Worth 1. We're back up with the Yukon Huskies taking on Iowa State, the Cyclones. Again, Yukon is undefeated. They're pretty untouchable, and I just don't think that they're going to lose here against Iowa State. That's a pretty no-brainer. It gets a lot harder to pick these games in the second round, considering that, like I said, the first round upsets don't happen, but in the second round you get teams that are seated much closer together, which tend to be obviously better games. That makes sense, right? Moving on, Maryland, North Carolina, the Terps taking on the Tar Heels. Here's my thing about North Carolina, and it's the one thing that makes me a little bit hesitant to take them a little bit further in my bracket. And I think it's their very small rotation. Courtney Banger only tends to run a 7 or 8 person rotation per game, which is probably pretty standard. I mean, not even 8. It's mainly 7. And then if the times that I have watched North Carolina this season, they have been struggling, they have a rough game, it's because they're not the most consistent. And really, Maryland isn't either. But I do like the Terps a little bit more because of Alucci Okonowa. I think she's just been a breakout star this season. She was very successful at Duke her first couple of years, but obviously transferring to Maryland this year. They do have Yarden Garzone still, and I think she is, again, a phenomenal player. So I'm going to have Maryland taking down the Tar Heels here. And then Notre Dame, Ohio State. Everything I said earlier about Notre Dame is still true. Are feeling the effects of the portal. They only really have Hannah Hidalgo. And Ohio State plays phenomenal defense. Jelani Cambridge is one of the best players in college basketball. She's extremely fast. She gets downhill. She can pass. She can shoot. She's an all-around 3-level scorer, and on top of that, a great defender. I don't think there's anything more a coach can want in a player. I think Jelani Cambridge, people are really going to learn her name in this tournament. And Ohio State also are one of the few teams that I've noticed that have pressed pretty consistently. They run like a 2-2-1 press that's been fairly effective this season. And I think this is one of the best defensive teams in college basketball. So I'm going to have to go with Ohio State over Notre Dame, right? And when you notice that there still is even a drop-off. When I talked about the drop-off between one seeds and everyone else, there's even more of a drop-off between host sites, the top 16 teams, aka the seeds 1 through 4, and then everyone else. And I think that's pretty evident here in this game. And then again, Illinois, Vanderbilt. I like Illinois. I talked about Sarah Parchman and Barry Wallace already, but Vanderbilt, man. Michaela Blakes, a sensational sophomore. I just think she's insane. She averaged, I think, 30 points a game in conference, which is just stupid, considering that Vanderbilt is an SEC school, and the SEC is a very challenging conference. So to be able to do that night in and night out, very impressive. Moving on here, USC versus USC. Who is the real USC? Well, I think I'm going to have to agree with the answer from this season when they played each other earlier. South Carolina is the real USC this season. Again, Southern California having a little bit of a down year this year without Juju and, Jazzy Davidson. She sustained an injury in the Big Ten tournament, but they said she's going to be back. And she hurt her shoulder, and it was pretty obvious that she was hurt during that game, and she had a rough night shooting. Moving on here. We have Michigan State and Oklahoma, which when I was looking at this bracket earlier, I was like, wow, this is an extremely hard game to pick. I'm sorry if you can hear a jet. I live kind of by like an air base, so it gets pretty loud sometimes. But just bear with me here. I don't think it's as loud anymore. Michigan State taking on Oklahoma. This was, I think, one of the hardest games that I had to pick in the bracket, and I think this game is going to happen, and it's going to be very fun. Keep in mind, Oklahoma is playing at home because they're hosting, and the host sides host for the first 2 rounds. Michigan State has Grace Van Slooten coming in as a senior. They've kind of hovered around, when looking at the AP poll this season, they've kind of hovered around a 12 to 16 rank, which is obviously very, very solid. The thing with Michigan State, though, is they're maybe not the best Big Ten team. They're solid. But when I look at their matchups, when they're going to have to play Oklahoma, I think of who can guard Reagan Beers. Because I like Grace Van Slooten, but she's not a back-to-the-basket traditional big like Reagan Beers is. And I remember watching her have to guard Lauren Betts during Big Ten Conference play, having to guard Ava Hayden during Big Ten Conference play. She's good, but guarding those traditional back-to-the-basket post players could be a little bit challenging. Oklahoma is an inconsistent team. We know turnovers is the name of the game for Oklahoma. Last year, what knocked them out of the tournament actually is because they had 30 turnovers against UConn in that game last year. But I think it's hard because my one hesitant with picking Oklahoma is, one, yes, they're playing Michigan State, who is a very solid team, but 2, they have a freshman point guard leading the way, right? Aaliyah Chavez, who actually did win NCAA Freshman of the Year, rightfully earned. She's kind of turned it on towards the end of the season. At first, it was a little bit of a struggle, but I think coming in as a freshman, you just have to get acclimatized to the You have to get acclimated to the new environment and new system that you're coming into play. Because I think, obviously, with her system in high school, which was kind of just you do what you want, to then college is going to be different, considering that she's playing along a very solid stars, actually. When you think of the 5 starters on Oklahoma, they're very solid. You have Aaliyah Chavez, you have Peyton Verhulst, you have Sahara Williams, you have Skylar Vann, and you have Reagan Beers. That's a very solid first 5. First 5. That's a very solid starting lineup. And I think also factoring in that they are playing at home and Oklahoma draws a pretty decent-sized crowd for their games, I'm going to have to go with the Sooners in this one. Washington, TCU. Okay, I've been saying all year TCU isn't as good as their ranking has been, which I think still remains true. Do I think they should have been 3 seed? I don't know. But, again, 3 seed, and they're a big 3 of Olivia Miles, Marta Suarez, and Clara da Silva is pretty strong. And I don't think Washington, yes, they have Ellie Ladine, yes, they have Avery Howell, yes, they have Sellers. But TCU, again, home floor, a veteran point guard, more tournament experience. I think that all factors in. And then heading into this last game in Sacramento, too, we have Georgia and Iowa. And I think Iowa kind of struggles against very solid teams, but Georgia's good, but they're not Iowa level because, first off, I'm going to take a moment here to recognize the absolute greatness of Ava Hayden, Iowa's sophomore post player. I love watching good post play, and Ava Hayden has the best footwork in college basketball. She is athletic, she can rebound, she's got a good little mid-range jumper there. Her back to the basket, she's got every move, every pivot, every finish. And you know what they say, Jan Jensen is one of the best post player developers ever, right? When you think back to legendary Iowa post players, you think of, hey, Megan Gustafson. You think back to Monica Sinano. And then obviously now you have Ava Hayden. And then I think the high-low duo with her and Hannah Stolke, plus Taylor Strumlow, the other sophomore, has been really, really picking it up towards the end of the season. Obviously filling in that last starting spot after, unfortunately, Taylor McCabe tore her ACL earlier this season, has been impressive. And then again, you have the veteran leadership there of Kylie Feuerbach. All right, moving on to Sacramento 1. UCLA and Princeton. As much as I'd love to see Princeton win, UCLA has 4 WNBA players in their starting lineup. Gabriela Hawkes, Lauren Betts, Gianna Neepkins, and Kiki Rice. Moving on here, we have another 4-5 game, Ole Miss and Minnesota. This is another tough one. 4-5s are always hard to pick, but Ole Miss has Cody McMahon, and they're under Coach Yo, who I think is another great coach in college basketball. Minnesota's good, but do they have the amount of athleticism to really stop Ole Miss? I don't know. But I just don't think they're going to have enough this game, so I'm going to have to go with Ole Miss over Minnesota in this next round. And then Baylor-Duke. Duke's been playing well recently. I said this earlier, but they started off the season a little rough, right? They fell to 3-5 to start the year. And actually, if you remember, all the way back to the first game of the college basketball season, because I remember, I was definitely watching this, when they played in Paris, they played Baylor. The first game was Baylor versus Duke, right? And then Baylor took that game, and I just think they're going to want some revenge here from Baylor. So I have to roll with Duke. Obviously, Kara Lawson, Toby Fournier. This team is solid. And then LSU over Texas Tech. LSU is, again, I think the best 2 seed this year. I know I've said this like 3 times, but if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or text me. I'm trying to answer as many questions as I can. But, again, I can't answer your questions if I don't see them. So please feel free to ask questions. Moving on. Texas, Oregon. Texas. I don't think much needs to be said. Texas is a 1 seed, Oregon's an 8 seed. Now, I normally wouldn't base stuff off of seeding, but the 1 seeds this year are so good that it's like, ugh, I don't know. West Virginia, Kentucky is rough, because West Virginia has been playing well recently. They've obviously won their conference tournament, coming out victorious in the Big 12, and then Kentucky, again, they're good. They're good. Tony Morgan, I think, is a phenomenal guard. I like Clara Strack. I like Kenny Brooks as their head coach. Amelia Hassett. This team is good. They're long. I can see it go any way. West Virginia is not the best when it comes to scoring because they're mainly a defensive team. Offensively, they're not the best, though, and I wonder if they will struggle a little bit with the height of Kentucky, considering that they have Chiani Key at 6'7", Claire Strack at 6'5", Amelia Hassett at 6'4", in their starting lineup. I mean, Kentucky's full of giants. And then you have Kentucky, how will they deal with the physicality of West Virginia's defense? But I think playing in the SEC has really prepped them well to deal with the physicality of West Virginia. So I'm going to have to go with Kentucky in this game here. Moving on, Alabama, Louisville. Louisville, like I said earlier, they just lost their conference tournament in the ACC. However, they have Taj Roberts, they have McKinley Randolph, they have, oh my God, what's her name? Her name is Barry. Her last name is Barry. And I think she's an emerging star in the NCAA. So I'm going to have to go with Louisville. I don't think it'll be very close. And then same here with Michigan. You have the sensational sophomore duo of Olivia Olson and Silas Swords. All right, we're moving on to the Sweet 16. We are back in the Fort Worth 1 region. We have UConn taking on Maryland. I don't think it's going to be very close. Again, Maryland, like I said, a little bit inconsistent, but I don't think they can hang with UConn. Right? Alucci Okonowa, okay, you're good, but now you have to go guard Sarah Strong, arguably best player in college basketball. I don't know. It's going to be tough. And then they have AZ Fudd on top of that, so it's like, wow, what does UConn not have? And then Kaylee Heckle, and then KK Arnold. So it's like, realistically, UConn is so deep that it's going to be hard for anybody to touch them. And then moving on here, I think Ohio State Vanderbilt will be a closer game than people are giving them credit for. I think I think Ohio State's defense is going to cause a lot of teams to struggle. But people are rooting for Vanderbilt UConn. And from what I remember last year, is Vanderbilt lost in the second round. They were ranked a 7 seed. They were a 7-10 matchup, and they beat Oregon in the first round in overtime. I remember that. But this is another close game, but I think Vanderbilt might have it, but I can see it. Whoa, what's going on? I can see it go either way pretty easily, but I think Vanderbilt is going to have the slight edge simply because Michaela Blake's exists. But then Ohio State's defense is good. So if you want to be cool and different, I could see somebody picking Ohio State. Because then they have more. Yeah, Jelani Cambridge is a sophomore, and she might not have as much tournament experience, but everyone on Ohio State is kind of new. But they've been there. They've been to the tournament for so many years. And Vanderbilt has too. And I'm not putting it past Vanderbilt's head coach, Shea Rolfe. If you don't know who Shea Rolfe is, here's a little bit of women's basketball history. She played at UConn in the early 2000s and was a phenomenal player under Gino Auriemma. Which is why so many people actually want that UConn-Vanderbilt matchup in the Elite Eight. But, that's rough, man. You could go either way, and I could justify it either way. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I think Vanderbilt is going to pull this out. But it's going to be close, and I could see it picking anyway. Like, this is a game that I might circle back to. Like, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, wow, I should have picked Ohio State. Like, that's going to be the type of game that haunts me when they win in this Sweet 16. This is possible. TBD could change. And I know I'm picking super chalky, but that's the reality of women's basketball. There's not many upsets. Just get with it. It's not like the men. But the men, I don't know. I could see the 1 seeds are very good this year. But we're not here to talk about men's basketball, so let's move on. Moving on, we are in Sacramento 2. Regional with South Carolina as the 1 and Iowa the 2 on that side. Fun fact, guys, for anyone that's listening, you have something to look forward to on the Low Show. Because I am actually headed to Sacramento to watch the Sweet 16 in 1 day of the Elite 8. Yes, I know, it's going to be a treat. It's going to be super fun. I'm looking forward to it. This should be the best weekend of my life. I'm going to try to make some content for social media. I tried to get some practice with that earlier with the UCLA-Iowa game that I went to, but I'm going to try to make a lot of content about that. And I'm just going to try to give you guys a behind-the-scenes look at what goes on at the Sweet 16 and in the Elite 8. And I think there should be some phenomenal games here, because if we're looking at how this bracket is shaping up already, I look at South Carolina, Oklahoma, and TCU, Iowa, and I'm like, wow, those games are going to be phenomenal. Anyway, so you have something to look forward to if you are a Low Show fan. Moving on, South Carolina, Oklahoma. Fun fact, South Carolina has 3 losses this season. If you have the ability to put it in the chat, I want to see if you know who those 2 teams were that they lost to. Yeah, hint, they have 3 losses, but they've only lost to 2 teams. So, I don't know. You guys can put in your answers if you want. Anyway. Alright, well, if you were thinking about it, they lost to Texas twice, and Oklahoma was the other loss. But I don't think that's going to happen again, because South Carolina has a chip on their shoulder. They feel like they've been disrespected. They're coming off of a loss in the national championship game last year to UConn. They have Joyce Edwards, they have Raven Johnson, they have Okot, they have so many weapons, and I just don't think that Oklahoma is going to be able to pull off another miraculous upset against South Carolina. Knowing that Dawn Staley is even more motivated now because they lost to them. So, she's going to be scouted, but so will Jenny Baranjic at Oklahoma. It'll be a good game, but I think South Carolina's pulling it out. And then looking over here, we have TCU and Iowa. Okay. Is this bias? I don't know. I think Iowa has been one of my favorite teams to watch this season, and that's no secret. I love Ava Hyden. I love their team. I love Jan Jensen. I've been saying it for a long time. TCU is not as good as their AP ranking says they are. I know. I think Ava Hyden... Okay, I understand that she's going to have to go up against 6'7" Clara Silva, but my one answer to that is she's had to play Lauren Betts twice. And Lauren Betts, both times, did not necessarily cook Ava Hyden as much as some people may have thought she would have. Now, the first time they played each other, when Iowa played UCLA at UCLA, Hyden was in foul trouble because she was picking those fouls up on Betts because it was super physical inside and it was really fun to watch as a post player. It was great post play. And then the second time when they lost by 51 to UCLA in the Big Ten Conference Championship, I just think that was a combination of Kiki Rice and Gianna Neepkins that just decided, look, we're WNBA players, we're just going to beat the crap out of you guys. So, I think Hyden can deal with Clara Silva. Again, another close game because I know I am slightly biased towards Iowa, but they are the weakest 2 seed. And I didn't know that they were going to get a 2 seed, especially after their loss in the Big Ten Tournament Championship. and just a couple other interesting losses they've had along the way. But I'm gonna still roll with my Hawkeyes here. They have a little bit more depth, I think, than TCU does. So we're gonna head down here, back to Sacramento 1. We're rolling back here to Sacramento 1. We have UCLA taking on Ole Miss. UCLA, like I said, they have 4 WNBA players in their starting lineup. And then I don't want to just breeze by Ole Miss like that. I should probably talk about them, but I just don't think they're going to have anyone that can stop UCLA. Stop Lauren Betts. Stop Kiki Rice or Jenna Neepkins or Gabriela Jaquez or Charlize Ledger-Walker or Sienna Betts or Angela Dukelich. So, I don't know. They have good players, solid defenders, but they don't have enough to stop UCLA that has so many weapons. And then Duke LSU. I've been saying this, LSU is the best 2 seed out there. Duke has been struggling. The ACC is not as strong this year as it has been in past years. I think Duke is a little bit inconsistent. But I like LSU here. I like LSU. I like Michaela Williams. I like Mylesia Fulwiley. I think, and obviously Flau'jae Johnson. I think Kim Mulkey's coming in with a little bit more of a chip on her shoulder, especially after losing to UCLA in last year's tournament. That will become important next round. Fort Worth 2, I got Texas first round, and then Louisville, Michigan, man. When you talk about 2 teams that are pretty evenly matched, I mean, I look at Louisville and I see Taj Roberts and Barry and McKinley Randolph, and then I look and see, okay, who's going to match up with him? And I look at Michigan and I'm like, wow, they have Silas Swords. Wow. They have Olivia Olson. Wow. They also have Kendall Dudley and Del Foss. Now, this is going to be a very solid game. Don't get me wrong. Olivia Olson is playing exceptional basketball right now, but so is Barry from Louisville. Man, flip a coin again, right? I'm going to go with a 2 seed. Now, I think that actually puts me at 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. Wow, Lauren, so much for bracketology. We could have just picked this ourselves. I know. I know. But that's the reality of women's basketball. And yes, I wanted to show you guys who to pick on this stream, but also I wanted to give some background information and some information about each team so you kind of understood what was going on when you were watching the game. Moving on here, we have UConn facing Vanderbilt. Like I said earlier, so many people wanted this Shea Rolfe going up against her former head coach, Gino Auriemma. Shea Rolfe, yes, played under Gino and then served as an assistant for UConn for many years before becoming the head coach at Vanderbilt. But I don't think they have enough because AZ Fudd and Sarah Strong exist. So we're going to move on there. South Carolina, Iowa. Now, dare I say this is the battle of the weakest 1 seed and the weakest 2 seed? Probably. I would love to see Iowa win this game, but do I think it's very likely? No. I don't think they have enough to beat South Carolina, and that pains me because I don't know. I just think Ava Hayden deserves better, man. But I just don't think they have enough to beat South Carolina. But man, when I think back to past tournaments, and I think back to past South Carolina-Iowa games, I'm like, wow. These are some of the best basketball games that I have ever watched. And not the national championship from Caitlin Clark's last year, because actually, the first half of that game was exceptional. But the second half, it obviously got out of hand. And then I hated to see Caitlin Clark lose and never get a national championship, but South Carolina was so good that year. I mean, they had Camila Cardoso, and then Tessa Johnson as a freshman decided that she just wanted to be her. But when I think back to the year before that, when they beat South Carolina in the Final Four, when South Carolina had Aaliyah Boston, shoot, that was a great basketball game. That was really, really fun. And I hope, again, when I think back to moments like that, I'm like, wow, this is the kind of memories that the NCAA tournament can make. There are some phenomenal basketball games that take place every year in March and April, and they just create these lifelong memories for us basketball fans. Now, I don't know if you guys think about this as much as I do, but I think about my favorite tournament games all the time, and they just bring me so much comfort. Or I feel really bad when I watch them, but there's that. We have UCLA and LSU. When I say that this game could go anywhere, because I could realistically see UCLA kind of lay an egg here. When I think about their game against Texas, their one loss of the season, they were actually getting whooped up until the fourth quarter, and then they kind of came back a little bit and cut the game to 10, but they couldn't really chip the lead down anymore. And when I think of Texas and I think of LSU, they are kind of similar teams here. So you could argue that, hey, I don't know about UCLA because they're not a very deep team. They only run like a 7-person rotation, and that is partly due to their transfer portal mishap, I guess, this last offseason when they lost their entire sophomore class, people that are sophomores this year, like Janiah Barker, Avery Kane, etc. London Jones even. I know she's not a sophomore, but she went and played for USC. So that's kind of crazy, transferring from UCLA to USC. Pretty wild stuff. But I could see this go either way. I could really see this go either way. Because LSU, right, they have Michaela Williams, they have Grace Knox, they just have a really deep roster and a well-coached team. But UCLA also has 4 WNBA players. 4 WNBA players. Lauren Betts might go first overall, for all I know. But that's a different conversation to have because I think Dallas needs her more than they do AZ Fudd. But some people aren't ready for that conversation, and that will come around draft time when I make an episode for that. So I gotta go with UCLA. I gotta roll with the Bruins. 4's up. But this is hard. This is hard. And then Texas, Michigan. As much as I'd love to see Michigan upset Texas and throw Michigan into the Final Four here, which I think I've actually done in one of my brackets, Texas is playing so good. And oh my gosh, Lauren, why are we doing bracketology? There are 4 1 seeds here in the Final Four, because the 1 seeds are so much better than everyone else. And the 1-2 seed that I can actually see making it is LSU upsetting UCLA, which you could do in your bracket, and I wouldn't give you slack for it. There are a couple games where I'm like, this can go either way, and I think one of them, if it comes down to it, will be Kentucky, West Virginia, will be Ohio State, Vanderbilt, will be LSU, UCLA. I think those 3 games, like, I couldn't be mad if you picked them either way. Now I did play chalk on all 3 of them, but I did have some reasons behind it, I don't know. And then UConn, South Carolina, a rematch of last year's national championship game. South Carolina's probably going to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. I'm sure of it. And then obviously we have UConn trying to win a historic 13th national championship with AZ Fudd, Sarah Strong. Again, I explained this before, but in case you have just tuned in to the live here, the one thing that makes me hesitate about UConn is their lack of strength of schedule, considering that they play in the Big East. It's a solid mid-major conference, don't get me wrong. Like, Creighton's pretty solid, Villanova's pretty solid. These teams are good basketball teams, but they're just obviously not on the level of UConn. And then with their non-conference games that they scheduled, when you look back to it, they played like notable non-conference opponents. When you think back to it, they played Iowa, they played Notre Dame, and they played Tennessee. And then obviously they play Tennessee every year because that's kind of a historic rivalry thing. But Tennessee just didn't amount to be as good as they were last year. And then same with Notre Dame, right? And then Iowa again kind of lays eggs against big games. So I could see you making them lose earlier and making them lose to TCU. But again, it's up to your bracket. I'm just trying to give some guidance here and some background information for each of these teams so you can make an educated guess on your bracket. But I am going to have to roll with the Huskies here because South Carolina is good. But we saw what happens when they play some really good teams, right? When you think back to the SEC Championship last week or 2 weeks ago. And you see that Texas went up 14 points to start the game and went up 14-0 to start the game. And you're like, wow, what's up with South Carolina? Dawn Staley's going to prepare them well, but so will Gino Auriemma will prepare the Huskies well. So I am going to have to go with Connecticut. And then Texas UCLA, man, you can see that go either way too. Madison Booker, Rory Harmon, Kyra Oldacre, very solid players for Texas. And then their head coach, Vic Schaefer, I think is also very solid. But then when looking at this Final Four, they all have very good coaches. Because when you have a good coach, you're able to attract better players. Your teams are obviously better coached, have more interesting systems. Obviously, you have Gino Auriemma, arguably best head coach of all time at UConn, and then Dawn Staley, Corey Close at UCLA, and then Vic Schaefer at Texas, who's just been doing a great job at his job for the past however many years. I mean, I feel like Vic Schaefer has been a basketball coach for ages. One hesitant, though. I'm going to have to go with UCLA, and the only reason I'm going with UCLA is the 4 WNBA players on their roster. So that leaves us here with one more game. We are predicting the national championship here. Honestly, I can't be mad at you if you pick UConn, UCLA, or Texas to win the national championship. I just don't think South Carolina has enough to do it. They could miraculously pull up an upset against UConn in the Final Four. If they all have to make it that far. This is just relative. This is according to my bracket here. They could miraculously pull up an upset against UConn, but I don't think they're going to be either UCLA or Texas in the championship. I think they have a better shot at beating Texas than they do UCLA. But I think here, for my champion, I'm going to go with UCLA, and here's my one thing. Who's going to guard Lauren Betts? And Lauren Betts is a good offensive player. She's not the best offensive post player I've ever seen, but defensively she's so good at 6'7", and then she has good finishes around the rim. Like, she gets the job done. And then you think of the depth of UConn, but then you also look at the depth of UCLA, and is UCLA's depth better? They're old, they're experienced. These are all fifth-year players here. Hawkes, Rice, Lauren Betts, Gianna Neepkins. I mean, Charlize Ledger-Walker. These are all vets in their starting lineups. They're coming back this season with a vengeance, especially after getting embarrassed by UConn in last year's Final Four. And UConn doesn't have, yes, they're an identical team, essentially an identical team to how they were last year. They do have Sarah Williams, Bright, and they have Kaylee Heckle, but the core is kind of the same. They still have Sarah Strong, and they still have AZ Fudd. They still have KK Arnold. But they don't have Paige. And Paige Beckers is a great basketball player. Are they going to be able to do it this year without Paige? I don't think so. So I have to go with UCLA. Another reason to pick UCLA here is strength of schedule is an important factor to look at. And I know I've talked a lot about UConn's strength of schedule this stream, so I don't need to talk about it more. But UCLA and their strength of schedule. They are 18-3. Or how are they 18-3? They have one loss in quad 1 wins. And you might be asking, hey Lauren, what's quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, quad 4? It's basically a system of ranking your opponents by quad 1 means you're very good, 2, 3, 4. It's a ranking system, and quad 1 is obviously the best. And playing in the Big Ten Conference, having a strong non-conference schedule has, I think, prepared UCLA for this moment, including having a veteran roster, a good coach, and I think high morale, coming off of a 51-point victory over Iowa, which is, I don't think people talk about enough how impressive that was. So, tiebreaker, you put in as many points as you want. I'll probably go with 141 or something. Just considering that, I don't know. I feel like games normally end in the 70s anyway. Plus, my basketball number's 41, so that's kind of always something. So we'll submit this bracket here. Oh, sorry. But yeah. So this is the Low Show Bracketology bracket. Please, if you have any questions, let me know. I would love to answer your questions. Text me, put it in the chat, create an account, let me know. I'll probably stay on here for a couple more minutes. If there's no questions, I'll finish up the stream. And if you're curious and you maybe missed some parts or you wanted to rewatch, I am recording it and I will upload this here to YouTube, probably in a couple parts to YouTube and Spotify, so you could listen to it in the car if you wanted to, if you loved the Low Show that much. But expect a lot of content this March Madness season. It's been fun. This is my favorite time of the year for college basketball. I really love the tournament, and I hope you guys are getting excited, because Selection Sunday just has me feeling different, really different every year, and it's super fun. Expect some content from the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 up in Sacramento. I'm excited to go to that. You guys should be excited. I hope I can get some good content out that week. And then I think the games start on Wednesday. I don't think I said that, but the games start on Wednesday is when the play-in game starts. The play-in games will be on Wednesday and Thursday, and then the first round will be on Friday and Saturday. I'm going to try to catch as much basketball as I can. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to be in school, so I can't watch as much as I want, but I will record some games and just try my best to watch as much basketball as I possibly can to make educated podcasts for you guys. So I'm going to stop my recording here. If you have any questions, please put in the chat. I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Again, I'm going to stop the recording here. You can rewatch on at the Low Show Podcast on YouTube. Please give me a follow on social media at _low_podcast on Instagram, and at the Low Show Podcast on TikTok, as well as give me a follow here on Twitch. If I can figure out how to do more of these streams, I think I'd like to, but please give me a follow. And then please sub on YouTube, because I think next year it'll be a lot easier to stream on YouTube. It's a lot easier to access, so thank you guys very much for tuning in. I appreciate it always. So I'll stay on here for a couple more minutes for questions, but I'm happy you guys could tune in and watch. It means a lot to me. So I'm going to stop the recording here.